Hello, my name is Yun Ji, Associate Professor of Chemical Engineering. I teach Chemical Engineering Lab 3. That's a lab for our junior students.
Hello, and I'm Ali Ashami. I am the instructor for Seniors Lab, Lab 4, and I'm an associate professor here at the Chemical Engineering Department. Now, I will take you through Lab 360, if you like. And I'd like to introduce Dave Hirschman, our engineering lab technician, that will walk you through the safety precautions and all the safety involved with the lab, all labs in this room 360.
Hello again. We have our material safety data sheets here, first aid kit, and if you notice that my safety glass cabinet is empty due to COVID, we're not letting the kids pick and choose. They're issued brand new in a sealed package to each student. I have extras on hand should they get broken, lost, or the student forgets. And that's due to all our COVID stuff. Fire extinguisher available. We have body and eye wash stuff available here. Eye wash, of course, for the stuff in this lab. At the moment, there's no hazards that would necessitate the body wash in here, but there are several here centrally located for some of our research and should the need arise. Also in this lab, we have the fume hood that the students are briefed on prior to operation. I have the door open right now so you can see what one of our experiments is. Typically, that would be closed in the operating position. We also use bottled gases in this lab for some of our experiments. I have nitrogen, I have hydrogen, I have CO2, nitrogen again, and a breathing air. They're all secured, proper regulators attached for all our safety concerns. They're also, when we come in, should the students need those for whatever experiment, there's some wipes, there's some gloves available here for them. We have several different styles of gloves depending on the experiment we're using. The professors will talk to that when they get to that experiment. And lastly, for this little bit, prior to any of our students coming into the labs, and that's all of our students, we go through a classroom safety lecture, I guess, if you will, where they're talking about all the hazards associated with this, and they're given a short quiz by their instructors prior to them ever setting foot in the lab. And then once they come in here, we do a real quick familiarization so they can look and see where all of our safety equipment is located, where the body and eye wash stations are located, and anything else of concern they're going to need for their class or experiment, or however you want to term that. And I'll turn that back over to Professor O'Shaughnessy.
All right, hello again. So I will walk you through the first 6 experiments in this Lab 360. The first one is our radiation heat transfer experiment. This basically involves an emitting plate where it gets supplied electrical energy. It basically generates heat, it emits it, and we have the thermopile as the sensor that detects the incidence heat, records it in an automatic data logger, and the students collect this data and analyze it to basically verify and validate the Stefan-Boltzmann's constant, or the Stefan-Boltzmann's law. That's for this first experiment. Our second experiment is the vapor-liquid equilibrium experiment. This experiment involves distilling a mixture, a binary mixture, using a hot plate, and basically the students condense or separate the vapor from the liquid. They collect the vapor samples and they take it to the GC for analysis, along with some samples from the liquid part, and they develop their vapor-liquid equilibrium data for basically distillation purposes. When the students are running this experiment, usually they are expected to have the door at least halfway down for protection purposes. to the third experiment. Our third experiment is the gas separation membrane setup. It basically involves an emulating membrane system that gets fed pure gases from these individual cylinders, and also they get fed a mixed gas from this mixing cylinder. The gases go through the membrane. The students basically monitor, they vary the pressure, and they monitor the temperature drop, temperature difference across the membrane, and any effluent gases get vented back into the fume. Now, that's our third experiment. Our fourth experiment is the Antisteady state heat transfer experiment. What it involves is we have a hot bath, an oil bath. Once the students energize the system using automatically controlled, using lab view, the bath rises. It immersed 3 different metals into the bath, and we have thermocouples along each metal, and the data gets collected automatically. The students collect that data and they do the computation and compare it to the analytical solution from the unsteady state problem. That's all for the fourth experiment. Our fifth experiment involves fermentation. This is a house-made, house-built system by Dave. This is a bioreactor, and this is a turbidimeter, and the system, and this is the heat exchanger. The students simply grow yeast, and they basically monitor the growth over a course of a couple of days. They collect the data and they model the microbial growth, and they basically report on that. And that's all for our fifth experiment. Our sixth experiment concerns a solid liquid extraction. Simply, what the students are tasked with is to extract oil from seeds. As you can tell here, we have canola seeds. The students will grind the seeds, get the grind, and they soak it in solvents, different solvents, and they basically compute the oil recovery based on the type of solvents they use. So this concludes my part for the first 6 experiments. I will pass it on to Dr. G to walk you through the remaining 5 experiments in Lab 360.
Hi, hello. Please follow me to our first experimental setup here. This is a fuel cell electrolyzer combo. Students use this to test the system efficiency. That's used in our Lab 2 class. Okay, so our next one is called the polymer coating experiment setup. This experiment involves hot temperature to use the oven to test the effect of thermal conductivity on thickness of the coating. So therefore, the students are required to wear these special gloves during the experiments. And also students use this one to practice DOE techniques that's used in Lab 2 and Lab 3. So please follow me for our next experimental setup here. So this is our fluid flow experimental setup. So please note that this is built in-house by our engineering tech. So students use this one to study the Reynolds number, fluid flow behavior, also the effect of the pipings and fittings. So that's used in Lab 2, 3, and also the unit of classes. So next one is our process control lab here. So for this process control lab, students use a mixed tank. Then they feed the fluid to this cylinder. There's also cold water filled in this cylinder. So remember that this is actually also built in-house by our engineering tech. Everything is controlled by lab view here. Students use this one to study the process dynamics that's used in Lab 4 and CHE 408, that's called process dynamics and control. So our last experimental setup here, that's the water shell heat exchanger, shell tube heat exchanger. Students use this one to study the heat transfer efficiency that's used in Lab 1, Lab 2, and the CHE 206 unit operations. So please note that we did not wear gloves, we did not wear masks today. That's because the students are not in the lab, so you can hear us better. We did not wear masks, but during the real lab classes, students are required to wear masks all the time for our classes. So that concludes my part of the lab tour.
And this concludes our description of the experiments in Lab 360. If you have any questions or concerns, please let me or Dr. G know. And we thank you for taking the time for reviewing our lab. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.